Okay. Okay, everyone. I'm a big fan of starting on time. So I'm going to go ahead and get us introduced. And as people pop in, again, this will all be recorded. So for anybody who wasn't able to attend, we'll have it on the YouTube channel. And I'll ask, I'll send a link to that once we complete the meeting. So everyone, thanks for coming as the FSC leads, and please feel free to share this. Always share these invites with anyone on your FSC who you think might be interested, or neighbors. Just the more people we can get engaged, the better. So today we have Carol is going to talk about FireWise communities and how that can impact insurance. We have Joel, is it Lochner? Loucher, Joel Loucher from United Policyholders, and then Ganon Laidlaw, who is from Jaffe Insurance and does a lot of insurance brokerage and has been a huge help for many of us up here in finding difficult to find insurance for our fire prone areas. So I want to, Carol, I am going to hand you the floor to get us started on your FireWise community presentation here.
Okay, so good evening. Let me make sure everybody can see all this as big as it can be. Okay, so are y'all seeing a pretty picture of the Napa Valley and trees and the Napa logo?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. Well, welcome. I'm Carol Rice, and I'm a consultant to Napa Community FireWise Foundation, and I do mostly community evaluations and help with grant funding and expertise. But I also have had in previous lives experience in doing underwriting criteria for insurance, and have done peer reviews of catastrophic models for insurers, and helped with determining a probable maximum loss for folks. So but I don't write insurance. So I'm learning along with you guys, and I'll be very interested to hear the rest of the presentation. Most of the presentation is about the FireWise program and how NFPA is developing a series of NFPA community NFPA FireWise communities. So here we go. So what is NFPA's program? It is a National Fire Protection Association, and NFPA is an entity that sells and makes standards. They make them and then they sell them. And it has arrangements with lots of agencies like the U.S. Forest Service and organizations like Institute for Business Home Safety. And they are, so it's a national, the FireWise community is a national program that has many different agencies behind it. One of those agencies that is supporting this program is CAL FIRE. And CAL FIRE actually has a community wildfire preparedness and mitigation division through its land use planning. And if you click on the NFPA website, you're going to actually be reviewed, and it goes right to CAL FIRE. So there is a very strong link between the NFPA FireWise community and CAL FIRE. So your application is going to be reviewed by Shane Galvez. So we may get to know him through the process here. And this actually is from the CAL FIRE website, and then they refer you to this particular link. All right. So keep in mind that this is a national program, and outside of California, there aren't a whole lot of fire safe councils. So this is pretty much the only organizing entity that can.
Pressure tank.
To
open the garden hose tap. We will now prime the system. With minimal effort, we will have water in under a minute.
So can we mute
By
that?
pumping the guzzler, air is removed from all parts of the system, creating creating a vacuum. This pulls the water in the lake
I
out through the
think
foot valve
we're-
and into the side.
There we go. Thank you. So keep in mind that outside of California, there aren't a whole lot of fire safe councils. And so Firewise Communities is the entity that can be organized around wildfire. And we have so much that we've done here. It's really, to my mind, we just have to package it up and put it in an application so you can get credit for the good work y'all are doing. And this is kind of a pep talk. You can do this. And so some of the risk assessments that are part of this are kind of daunting. But I wanted to let you know that this whole Firewise community process is meant to be an enabling thing. We want you to be a Firewise community. There actually isn't anyone that's going to come around and say, oh, your number here wasn't right. So you can do your best estimate, you can do your best guess, but know that nobody knows the community like you do. So just keep that in mind. So why become a Firewise community? So it helps with insurance, and it helps potentially with cost, but even more so with the ability to even get insurance. And most importantly, it actually does create safer conditions and better preparedness of the community. If you're this homeowner, you've done everything right. You have your good defensible space, your structures, but an insurer may not be interested in reassuring you because of all your bad neighbors around you. Whereas if many more of your neighbors, you'll never get 100%, but many more of your neighbors, then it's much more likely that this person will get insurance, in my estimation and experience. So that's a big reason why. So going back to insurance, context matters. So here's an example. We have just one small parcel, and this parcel, the insurer may look at typical things like, does he have a defensible space? What are his structure like? What is the topography there? Is there access and water supply? Do they have alarms and potentially good firefighting defenses? So that's the parcel level. But they also have to consider regional levels. So here's the same parcel, but I zoomed it out. And because they're also going to look at the fire department rating. Every fire department has a rating to it, depending on response time and equipment and training and all sorts of good. What is the quality of that fire department? They look at fire history on a regional level, and then they look at whether or not that area actually has a lot of insurers in there. For example, in the 1991 Oakland fire, Farmers Insurance found out they had 40% of the policies in that $2.2 billion loss. So that was like, ooh, we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket anymore. So they look at things in a regional level. And then there is then even further back, California scale. California has at least one of its own catastrophe models, and that looks at California as a totality. What is ignition history? And knowing that the fires can be burning both in the north and the south, and there are multiple fires. They're huge assets at risk because our values are so high here. They look at fire frequency on a California scale, and then they'll also note that that while all these may be bad stuff, we also have probably the best firefighting department and more firefighting resources than the rest of it. Then, and as far as insurance goes, thinking of California scale, they have their own set of risk in the form of regulations. So California is very highly regulated, and that is a concern for them too. And then, as I mentioned, the totality of loss and that may mean that when they get so much loss, they will have to actually go to reinsurance. Those big insurance companies have to also get insurance when really bad things happen. And so I just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of different scales on this, and context matters. So what can we do? We can go back to our scale and be effective and do what you can do on your own scale. Of course, do work around your own property, and then convince your neighbors to become green too and be fire safe. And be a fire-wise community, which increases the scale of and the impact of your actions. Support your local fire department and make sure that they get all the funding that they need so that their ISO rating will go up. And of course, be an advocate for appropriate legislation. So those are the things that you can do, but being a fire-wise community is super important and part of that issue. So what are the components of being a certified fire-wise community? They're aiming at trying to get you to develop a 3-year work plan. And they, more than the community evaluations I've done in the past, they focus on structure attributes and then also some wildland fire hazards. Your three-year work plan should have at least 3 things to it. It should talk about structure retrofitting and ignition resistance. It should discuss a project for every 3 years, vegetation treatments to reduce fire hazard. And it should talk about preparedness, signs and maps and notification and good stuff like that. All stuff that you've already been doing. And then it does ask for volunteer hours, and that's so that they can make sure that you have skin in the game too. You have a commitment, and it's not only money but also volunteer times. Okay. So I'll go over some of the resources that are available to you to help fill out these applications. So I just mentioned the 3 common components would be the risk assessment, a 3-year work plan, and the volunteer hours. Those are the big heavy lifts. And here are some things that you have available to you. You have your community evaluation. I call it a risk assessment community evaluation for your community. You have that map of maps and statistics, and I'll give you the link to that in a couple of slides. And then on the countywide community wildfire protection plan, we have a community base map that has a slug of information available to you. So you can do a screenshot and send it in or summarize it and just describe it in text. For the work plan, you can you already have in your community wildfire protection plan a list of projects. And if that is not exactly what you want to do, you can also go to the Napa countywide CWPP for their project list. And then of course, Firewise on their website also has a set of projects too, mostly aimed at structure protection. So for the volunteer hours, I encourage you to use all of the funding sources. And when I say not just all, when I say all, it's not just the Fire Safe Council funding sources, but also what money was spent by Napa Firewise in your Fire Safe Council. Sometimes that's a big number. And then also all of the volunteer times, we are going to be able to get chipping how much time it takes for people to do chipping. And the chipping program from Napa County is very big. And there's a lot of time that's put into chipping, and those can all be captured in your volunteer hours. So those are resources that will be available to you. So I mentioned that there was this file with a bunch of maps and statistics. Every Fire Safe Council has this. And so it has the map of boundaries. That is one specific thing that they do ask for, is a map of the boundaries. And then it also asks for acreages and the population, how many structures there are. And so these are cool things that you can put in your application, already done. And here are 4 things on the countywide community wildfire protection plan that will help you. The first one is, again, a list of projects. It's in this action plan. The community base map that I mentioned is right here. And then there are 2 story maps. One is about fire hazard and another one about fire risk. Here's an example of a page in the action plan, again, in the community wildfire protection plan website. And look at all these cool projects. So, as a Fire Safe Council, the main thing for you guys to do is just figure out, what do you want to do in the next 3 years? And these are things to pick from. Some of them are high cost, And those are probably going to be funded by Napa Firewise through grants or other county funding. But there are a lot of things that there are no costs. And so that's something that certainly could be done by the Fire Safe Council. I mentioned the community base map. Here are 2 tabs within the community base map. One is the fire history. They will ask about fire history and in general terms. And then here's your fire hazard severity zone. They're likely to want to know that too. Right. So here's here again, Napa National Fire Protection Association doesn't know much about fire safe councils. CAL FIRE does, but they say first organize yourself. Well, you've already done that. And then next plan. You've already got a community wildfire protection plan. And then the next one is do, and that's your description of what you want to do in the next 3 years, a little bit more detailed than your community wildfire protection plan. And the last one to tell is simply put it on paper and get your application in. In the risk assessment, they ask for a variety of stuff about vulnerability of homes and a lot about structure characteristics. So I just want to let you know that they're going to dive deep onto that. And in your assessment, they you can do, I've seen somewhere that they want a fire department to be in there. No, you can drive by, walk through, you can, just by living there, you're going to know pretty much the condition of the neighborhood. And then you do have to say who helped you with it. So I just want to give a shout out to already some folks within Napa Firewise Foundation area that in Napa have already gone through this process. And so they may be able to help you too. So here's some of the general site information, just pretty easy to get. And from those 2 site specific areas, site maps and statistics. They want to know how many dwelling units, are they single family homes, what the size of the lots are, and the vegetation. Do you have a history of fire? The answer is yes. And then local characteristics. So pretty easy to do. And the main thing is ideally, you would look at your risk assessment so that you could identify a vulnerability you would answer in your action plan. But as I said, try to do your action plan first. And you absolutely can use your best guess based on your observations, because this is great. It's multiple choice. You can choose between these broad categories. Generally, you know, and this I was thinking about Calistoga on this, and my knowledge and observations about Calistoga, I checked these off. And it's you want to look at the homes, and you want to look at immediately around the homes, the things that are attached, and like their decks and gutters. So then they want to talk about defensible space. So Napa Firewise and you folks have been talking about structure, ignition resistance, and defensible space for years. This is all something you all know about. You probably have a really good sense of what those proportion of homes are that have these characteristics in your neighborhood. And then they do ask about wildlands nearby. Finally, they talk about wildland fire hazards. And so here's an example of blurbs I put together for Calistoga, that there are public lands nearby. There are some management plans to it. And if there is any project in the community wildfire protection plan that addresses the wildlands in your neighborhood, be sure to say that. So here we're going to move into the work plan. Ideally you want to summarize the results of your risk assessment and point towards your work plan, your action plan. So you're going to summarize what you found out, and then the next things will be what you want to do. As I mentioned, you want to have a year, 1, 2, 3 years. This is just year 1. And here's an example of a Firewise application in the East Bay. And they had a whole slug of things they wanted to do. They were brand new. They wanted to start hosting things and get the words out. They had a whole lot of stuff that very fine scale, because this is a small community. For Calistoga, because there are thousands of people there, it probably might not be so fine scale. But then they also do want to talk about evacuation planning and preparedness. So think about what you want to do in the next 3 years. It does not have to be this detailed, and it does not have to be this voluminous. I've also seen applications where they're like 3 things in each year. One of the sticking points, as I mentioned, has been volunteer time. And the fire safe councils do already spend a lot of time on this. So let's just capture the time that you spend. Do your neighbors, have they been doing retrofitting of or maintaining the structure? Probably yes. Have they been creating defensible space? Oh yeah. So you might do an estimate of how many hours your neighbors know and your community spends on this, and estimate that. And I think it'll be a big number. I also want to encourage you to ask for the number of chipping days that have been done for the chipping program for Napa Firewise, because they know how long it takes. They've been using that for volunteer times too, and include that as well. For your monetary investment, as I mentioned, include all your funding, include all of the DOD funding that you've gotten from the holiday parties, include all the private donations you've gotten, and include all of the money that you've gotten from grants too. So, and this is the actual form that you would have to include. So this is how they're expecting you. They really do want you to get credit for all the time that you spent working on the structures, landscaping, and then the common areas. So here's and then they do want to find out who has been doing what. Well, they actually give you a checklist. So, have you done this? Do you want to do that? Do you want to do this? Sure. So that's easy on the website. It's a nice thing that they do. See whether or not they give you a set of projects that you can look at. So as I mentioned, these are the things that I think are the biggest hurdle. It is the risk assessment, developing the action plan. And in the action plan, it'll include education outreach, vegetation removal. And then the investment, as I mentioned, for every residential dwelling unit, not person, but dwelling unit, they want a value of $25.43. So for funds, it wouldn't be that much money, but they do also want some volunteer time, and it should be a combination of both. All right, so pretty much this is the end. Like I'm encouraging you, let's start applying. And there are a lot of projects that the fire safe councils are already doing. And some are fairly low cost, and some are funded through Napa Firewise. And I hope that you can receive the benefits of your hard work. So I think Napa Firewise has made my time available for you folks, and with the goal of having y'all be Firewise by this time next year. So I'd be happy to answer questions and comments, but we may want to hold that to the end so that we can get through the other wonderful speakers we're going to hear today.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Super, we are ready. Let me do a screen share. Hold on, where'd it go? I'm going to screen share my desktop. Hold on, and you will, let me find, here it is. Let's see here, hold on, minimize this and put this into, what do I do, section. Hold on, I'm trying to share this so that it makes sense. There we go, no. Slideshow, no, there we go, okay. Ready. So United Policyholders, here we go.
Okay. All right, I'll start in if that's all right.
Yes.
Go for it,
Hello,
Joel.
everyone. I'm Joel Launcher. I work for United Policyholders. Thank you all for being here, and sorry that anybody has to pay attention to wildfire-related or insurance-related information, but that is the world we live in now. And hopefully this will be informative for you. I previously spent 35 years with the California Department of Insurance. And before that was an insurance underwriter myself. I think maybe that's Carol shared that as well. And now I'm with the United Policyholders. You may be familiar with them. Next slide, please. Thank you. United Policyholders is a nonprofit, does a lot of work helping people that have had total losses from catastrophic events such as wildfires. Did a lot of work in the Napa community and Sonoma counties, but has been around helping people since the Oakland fire was kind of where United Policyholders was one of the a phoenix that rose out of those ashes to help people with major claims issues. But now, one of the major insurance issues is availability and affordability. And so United Policyholders has been involving itself in this issue as well. And just to note, no cost to any consumers ever that we're helping. We're funded by grants. And so really, we're here just for you, the consumer, with any kind of advice we give is free to you. Next slide, please. So I'm going to touch a little bit on some things that you heard just a minute ago from Carol. Every homeowner's insurer today generally uses some kind of wildfire risk model. There are two principal models that insurers use, and your agent or your insurer may have shared with you which models they use, but one of them is CoreLogic and one of them is Fireline. Those pretty much dominate the homeowners insurance marketplace. Both have a very limited scale of or number of issues that they evaluate. And so I've kind of set up a sample here. Here we're looking in the middle of that red circle. There is a home being scored by this model. And what it is a satellite image that then looks at the topography of this home and the fuel loading. So it can determine from this high up in space the slope that the property's on, the level of fuel that surrounds the home, that how far away from the home varies in most models, sometimes depending on whether the area has a history of high winds or not. And then the other thing is the access. And actually, Carol mentioned some of these as well. But you can see from this evaluation, and this is kind of, this is the entry point into getting coverage, is your wildfire risk score. They aren't looking at anything about anything you do with your home itself before, you can be deemed ineligible or non-renewed based on this evaluation alone. And all those mitigation steps that we're talking about or Firewise community issues wouldn't matter under some insurers' current approach and how they underwrite today.
That is correct. Do you want me to add on to that, Joel?
Yeah, so I'll mention Gannon is going to join in here and there with comments helpful from an agent's perspective. So yeah, please.
Definitely. I don't want to take over your slideshow. I just want to jump in and add some helpful information for everybody. So just to introduce myself, my name is Gannon Laidlaw, and I'm a property and casualty insurance producer at Jaffe Insurance Agency. I handle a wide array of commercial and personal lines insurance exposures. So anything from your small mom and pop shop or average single family home to multi-million-dollar businesses and high value homes. So in the Napa area, of course, wildfire is one of the biggest issues. And just to jump off of Joel here, CoreLogic and Fireline are one of the top two wildfire score third parties that insurance carriers do use. As he said here, so fuel, of course, is a big element that they'll look at. I know Fireline in particular, they rate it based on 3 elements, and that's going to be, from what I remember, fuel grass, trees, and dense brush. So that's what they will look at when rating your actual Fireline score. And then the scores will range anywhere between 0 to 30, with 0 being nothing, 1 moderate, 2 to 3, which is high, 4 to 12, or 2 to 3, which is moderate, 4 to 12 is high, and then 13 to 30 is going to be extreme. And we're seeing a lot more extreme ratings more than anything else these days. And it seems like the factors, involved in mitigating brush aren't getting looked at as frequently. It's just they're automatically tagging it as extreme. We used to see many properties getting reviewed on a property by property or home by home basis, but this is no longer the case. After the brutal wildfire seasons in 2017 and 2018, carriers just began saying no to entire zip codes. And this is somewhat still the case, but now wildfire scores do have an impact. So for example, a home in an urban area in Napa may have a lower wildfire score, making it eligible for more standard lines of coverage, but a home in Browns Valley may have a higher one, making it ineligible for standard lines. Both are in the same zip code, but the wildfire score determines who is eligible. We've often seen these inaccurate at times as well. So unfortunately, certain areas tend to bleed into surrounding communities. So if there's an area with high brush, we've seen that those scores tend to bleed into the areas with not as much brush, even when the proof is there and it's evident. So back to you, Joel. Sorry about that.
No, that's good. Well, jump in anytime. So
Okay.
Next slide, please. So just to give everyone a little insight into how insurance rating works, those same risk scores, and again, just mentioned in the case of Fireline, it's 0 to 30. In the case of CoreLogic, it happens to go from 0 to 100. So insurers collect data, loss data for each score, and that determines, past losses always determine what future rates will be. So this chart is actually from a filing from a major insurer. The blue bar on the left of each set of scores, you can see this is broken down by sets of CoreLogic scores. The blue bar on the left of each trio of bars is where the insurer's rates are now. The green bar is how much of a rate increase they're asking for. And the gold bar is the insurer's position on how much it could be asking for based on actuarial projections. So if you look on the left, that little set to the left, you can see the rate is already lower than all the higher scores, of course, because this basically is saying an area with very little wildfire risk. And the request for an increase is minimal. So the rate here is an average policy pays around $1,000, and they're looking to bump it up to like $1,050. But if you go far to the right, you can see that the premium on that blue bar, again, is already higher than the one way over to the left. It's already at like $1,300 or $1,400. And they're looking to basically double how much premium they will charge for those highest of risks. And they're telling the Department of Insurance in this rate filing that we could be asking for even more if we went as far as the projections tell us in this gold bar. Now, one thing to know about these scores too is most homes in California are down at that 0 to 59 score. That's urban California. So that's going to be, downtown San Jose or, Los Angeles. And so these homes over to the right are, more, that's the WUI, and the far right is extreme, up in the forest or up in a dense brush area. And there are very fewer homes that we're talking about there. So the majority of folks' home prices and premiums are staying about the same. But if you're in one of these higher risk scores, you can see that your premiums are dramatically increasing. And this is happening with one filing after another. Likely, the next filing this company makes, they'll ask to go to where the gold bar is indicating in their next filing, right? And then you'll get the rest of that increase. So next slide, please.
I can add a little more on that too.
Go ahead.
Okay. So as Joel said, I mean, the carriers rely heavily, if not only, on statistics to write insurance and determine rates. More specifically, they call it the law of large numbers. So basically, the more statistics they have, either in favor or not in favor of a specific risk, the more the rate changes. So with that being said, there are a lot of statistics right now working against Napa County, which is unfortunate, but that's the current reality. I just wanted to share some statistics with you that I recently read in an article posted by Surplus Lines and Wholesale Specialty Brokerage called CRC Group. And they reported that from 1964 to 1990, the American insurance industry paid out less than $100 million annually towards wildfire losses. And then the next 2 decades, that increased to almost $600 million annually. And if you compare that to 2011 to 2018, where wildfire losses increased to an average of $4 billion a year, and that's not including Napa and Sonoma County statistics, it doesn't look good. In 2017 alone, there was a $12 billion payout in wildfire losses from just the Tubbs fire. And then if you combine that with the $9 billion paid out from the 2018 Camp Fire in Butte County, they reported a quarter century worth of profits was decimated in 2 years for the California insurance market. So that's why you're seeing these ridiculous rates and insurance carriers just refusing to write insurance in these areas. The loss ratio is so significant, and those statistics are not in favor of this area. The insurance carriers are just looking at it as a money pit. Basically, they're going to put their money into there and it's not coming back out. And just another fact, 3 out of the top 7 worst wildfires in US history are coming from Napa and Sonoma counties. And those fires occurred in the past 5 years. So not much of a positive outlook, unfortunately, on an insurance premiums dropping and carriers flooding the market. This is the current reality in insurance. And it's something that Napa County residents and California residents in general are going to have to be living with for a while. However, we can attempt to make things better through mitigation methods of firewise communities, things like that, but it won't happen overnight. It's going to take everybody working at it for years in order to start to see those efforts pay off in the insurance market. Go ahead, Joel.
Okay, next slide, please. So one of the things
a quick question about that last slide. What were the values, the average values of these homes, or the risk being covered?
These are probably on average, I don't think the chart shows, but probably the average insured value replacement cost of these homes might be $450 or something like that. These are based on just a general average statewide. So likely some of the ones to the far right are lesser values, actually. But most of the middle is probably it arranged just like Napa, right? As you move away from the cities, prices drop, except in certain areas that are kind of the high end rural, which Napa and Sonoma counties kind of include, but a lot of the homes on the right are more like Sierra foothill counties, is my understanding. So next slide. So we go from that red circle and looking down from this satellite image to a change is occurring in how insurers are using models. So now what we're starting to move toward is aerial imagery. So much lower down review of the property. And one of the reasons that this is of value to everyone is that insurers are starting to take into account more of the immediate surroundings of the home. This slide is actually kind of a screenshot of a study from IBHS, which is the Institute for Business and Home Safety, which Carol also mentioned, and Zesty, which is one of the newer risk modelers that's in the marketplace. It's the one that Farmers, for example, has moved to. And these newer models and this newer approach starts to, it begins to matter what you have done at your property. So nothing you would have done at your property could change your fire line risk score. Maybe a huge community effort could make a difference. Here, we're starting to see that things that you do at your property level can have some impact on whether you get in the door with the insurer. Now, there's several other aspects of underwriting. Again, Carol mentioned several of those, like your fire department, your loss history, a lot of things. But at least with a review like this, if you've done the mitigation, and in here they're comparing a home where the tree limbs are over the roof and there's a lot of vegetation right up against the house, with one that has cleared its vegetation and created a defensible zone, and have a lot of imagery that shows homes like the one on the left have survived some major wildfires. So next slide, please.
And Joel, I just want to say you're right on there. These are mitigation methods that some carriers are beginning to make even a baseline requirement for obtaining insurance. And this just isn't in wildfire prone areas. So for example, I was just writing a home the other day in Los Angeles County. It was in urban Los Angeles, and there was a tree overhanging the roof, and most of our carriers actually declined to insure that home because there was a tree overhanging the roof. So it's not just here that we're starting to see those mitigation measures taking place.
So next slide, thank you. So then there's this, and you may have heard this already, but the Department of Insurance has proposed regulations. They put out a formal announcement of a set of mitigation standards that would where they would require insurers to give discounts if your home meets these standards. And so they had a hearing, they took input. Now they have released this revised set of regulations. So they're not the law yet. There's still a fight with the industry to go through before these become law. But one of the things on the community level, which is super important, particularly for this presentation, is that a Firewise USA sites is one of the indicators for a discount that would be mandated. And there aren't really many community level discounts that are going to be moving forward with this regulation. The property level mitigation are much the ones we've been talking about. I'll go through those in a minute. They're about zone zero and that type of thing. But just to build on Carol's desire to get a Firewise USA effort going here, it is likely to have an impact on your rates in the future, and it already does it is available with some insurers now. I think, again, you have a comment on that.
Yeah, there are, and I don't want to burst your bubble, but there are a couple of insurance carriers that do offer discounts for Firewise communities. However, it is still very early. And I just want to emphasize that statistical standpoint. Insurance carriers look at statistics. So if you can show that Firewise communities have great statistics and they are mitigating wildfire risk, they are going to get on board with that. And those in the future may be the only communities that actually qualify for standard lines of insurance, in my opinion. Right now, it's a lot of the California Fair Plan. I'm sure most of you have heard of them or are insured with them currently. But down the road, if we can get more Firewise communities and those statistics show that it does mitigate fire risk, I think a lot of insurance carriers will start to come back to the Napa Valley and Sonoma counties.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So the actions, in terms of property level actions that are taken, they're the same ones you're hearing about, that, and insurers are hearing these same things. I mentioned IBHS was involved in that earlier modeler and projection. IBHS is actually funded by the insurance industry. So when they come out with some kind of recommendations, the insurers likely believe them because they find they're not biased, against the industry, that they're going to be objective. Next slide, please. So United policyholders work to put together a list of mitigation actions about a little over a year ago of things you should do around your home. I will say they're not quite as daunting as you might think. So you don't have to do this, right? You don't have to put your home on some kind of barge and float it out into the lake. Next slide, please. You don't have to build a moat around it and use non-combustible concrete blocks 30 feet high to qualify. Next slide, please. In fact, so this set of measures that United policyholders came up with, they're things you've probably heard of, such as having a Class A roof, making sure your vents are the 1/8 inch, mesh. Next slide, please. That you've taken care of your wooden fences don't attach to the home, that your decks are cleared out of combustible materials, on and on. The United policyholders was the first one to kind of come out with a list like this. But next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oops, back one now, sorry. So, but after United policyholders came out with its list, it was soon followed by one at IBHS, that industry research arm, and most recently one by this a state agency partnership that included the Department of Insurance. The thing is, all of these lists look almost identical, right? They're about that 0 to 5 feet of clearance, zone 0, about clearing that 5 to 30 feet, limbing up, dealing with your decks, your vents, your roof. Very similar one to the next. The Department of Insurance regulations in terms of home mitigation has focused on the recommendations from the state agency partnership, but I'll mention the IBHS set of standards. IBHS intends to roll this out as a kind of a program where homeowners will pay a fee and an inspector will come out and validate that your home meets the standards, or determine that it doesn't. So you will get a certification. And as I mentioned, because insurers give credibility to IBHS, I'm going to guess that insurers will start building discounts into their programs for that IBHS certification. Another thing, that, and Gannon can comment on this as well, that insurers don't like to have to come out and inspect a home because it costs money to send somebody, and then if they find something, then the homeowner wants them to come back a couple weeks later to see if they've taken care of it. Or so I think insurers will like the idea that the consumer will pay for that IBHS inspection, and it will be validated by an objective party, not somebody in the neighborhood. So they might like that. But so between that program being available and the state agency partnership of discounts, kind of setting a standard for where insurers will have to give you a discount if you do these things, I think it's going to be more and more important that you actually take these steps. And actually, to build on something Gannon just said, I think at some point in time, we'll find if you don't take these steps, you just won't have any chance of eligibility for coverage in any area that's outside of an urban center.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, roofs in general are becoming a greater concern for carriers everywhere, and just not just residents in wildfire prone areas. I know many of our carriers are refusing to write new coverage or renew old policies if roofs haven't been updated or replaced in it's 20 years now, given that it's a 20-year roof. So I mean, these measures that are being taken here or being suggested are going to eventually be adopted by the insurance carriers. And it's not just going to be wildfire prone communities that are subject to these. It's going to be every insured in general.
Yeah. So next slide, please. So again, if you do these things, you're basically going to be consistent with an array of recommendations. Fire safe councils have very similar recommendations. Next slide, please. These are very similar to the 7A codes you see for generally new construction in the WUI. These same standards in terms of vents and roof type and all. These are the requirements for new construction. So they're consistent with that. Next slide, please. So, it's again up to you. Carol's, suggesting maybe jump in and start with get a FireWise community going. But for every homeowner, I mean, it is important that you start and do what you can. You may not want to spend the money today to do your roof. Sometime you always have to replace your roof anyway at some point. So you're going to want to get one that will make you more eligible for coverage. But start out doing the things that are available for you to do right in your yard. Take pride in taking step by step of what you can do. And, one of the key things here, I think everybody wants to encourage is that everything you do for your home, you are also doing for your neighbor's home. And Carol had that chart, if your home's surrounded by other homes that have done the work, your home's better off. So if you're the one doing that for your home, you're making your neighbor's home better off. And so this is really a great way for a community effort, is every time you're out there in your yard, you're helping your neighbor's yard. Next slide, please. So what United Policyholders has really focused on, we want people to do what they can, what's within their control to reduce their own likelihood of loss, right? Number one priority here is always that you don't lose your home. And a lot of people in Napa have gone through the experience of losing a home and everything they owned. And it is so traumatic. You never want that to happen. So that's the real reason for taking these steps. But the bonus reason is hopefully that you'll find insurance coverage options more available to you at lower rates than if you don't do this work or if your community doesn't do this work. So, you know, it's meant to be a win-win in terms of avoiding tragedy and benefiting, you know, financially and benefiting your neighbors as well. So win-win-win. Next slide, please. So because I was with the Department of Insurance and have worked now with United policyholders, and one of the toughest situations we see after some catastrophic losses is that people are underinsured. And it's already a challenge to get out there and deal with, you know, rebuilding. But if you don't have the insurance limits available to rebuild what you have, you really are, you know, starting out in a tough spot, even tougher spot. So if you, here I give an example, look at your policy. Do you have something similar to like a $500,000 limit for your 2,000 square foot home? Well, that would come out to $250 construction dollars per square foot. And odds are that will not rebuild your home in Napa County or most places in California. 350 might be a baseline, but there are homes that are gonna, as I say here, be much more. $500, $600, $700, you know, it really depends on your finishes, your cabinetry, your, you know, your foundation and all these things, but you really don't want to be significantly underinsured going into any fire season. Even increasing your limits by $50,000 gives you $100,000 more in coverage when you add in all the personal property and additional living expense and all the other limits that go up when your dwelling limit goes up. So please take a look and make sure you're not underinsured while you're resting from having limbed up your trees and cut back your bushes. And next
That's a
slide,
great
please.
point, Joel.
Yeah, thank you. And that's it for me. Again, do you have any other comments there?
No, I was just going to comment on the end one there. Elena and I had an email conversation recently, and that cost per square foot is more in the $500 to $1,000 range in the Napa County, unfortunately. So like Joel said, it's really important to make sure that your policy limits are going to insure you properly and sufficiently, because if it's not up there, it's going to be a really, really nasty surprise if you do have a loss.
Yeah. So at this point, if anybody has questions for Carol or Gannon or I think we'd welcome those.
Okay, cool, no questions. This is awesome. Gannon and Joel and Carol, thank you for your help with this and for putting this together and sharing it with us.
Definitely.
Yeah, and so no questions, you guys?
And
Okay.
Elaine, I do have one comment. And this is on Carol's part of the presentation. So at 4 o'clock, I got invited to a Yolo County Fire Safe Council meeting, and they had the CAL FIRE rep out of Northern Region, which is out of Reading, and he is his name is Shane Galvez. He's actually our rep for the area that helps fire safe councils or communities become FireWise certified. And so I spoke with him offline, and he's very interested in helping us to get some of our fire safe councils brought into this certification and walk us through this. You know, a suggestion of mine is maybe kind of poll our fire safe councils now and figure out which one or ones would be interested in doing it. And then we can also, I can assist reaching out to him and getting him engaged to get us through this application process if there's any problems or questions. I'm going to follow up with a meeting with him next week So if anybody does have interested in being a lead for getting your fire safe council through the certification process, I would say reach out to me. And there's a couple things I want to look through as well. One of the issues that I do have that I'll hopefully find a resolve for next week is that there is a limit of, the limit of homes, and Carol may have covered this earlier in her presentation, is a minimum of 8 homes, but a maximum of 2,500. I think that's going to be problematic for a couple of our fire safe councils, probably Angwin, potentially Calistoga, just due to the sheer numbers, but we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. Maybe there's a deviance we can do, or we'll break them up into neighborhoods just to meet those thresholds. But anyways, the help is out there. So I think it's just, and I'll reiterate, like Carol, we've done all the work, the volunteer hours, these meetings that we're having right now. It's just a matter of categorizing them through their application to get it submitted. So, but I would be interested in probably 1 to 3 fire safe councils to try to get us walk through this process, and then kind of beta test it and then go further, just so we can.
Well, JC, you can count on Diamond Mountain Fire Council because it's in the forefront of our thinking right now, and we're poised to get started on the application, and we have a lot of the components already handled that were mentioned today. So we definitely want to be moving in that direction right away.
Yeah, Calistoga has been trying to get our application. I filed it back in March, and they rejected it, saying it was incomplete, but no information about what was incomplete. And we've been struggling to get it sorted out ever since. And now Carol is trying to help us get through this, but it's very specific, the information they want, and some of it's very difficult to quantify.
Well, that's good information though, too. I'll bring that up and see if I can find out more when I meet with the CAL FIRE group out of Reading next week, and see if they can pull that application to do some clarification. I'll get back to you as well.
So we've got I know Calistoga has its hands up. I used it as an example, and a long time ago, Silverado Country Club has, Fire Safe Council has, theirs is already, and they already are a Fire Safe Council, and then they would, and they are gonna need to be re-upped. And then I know Circle Oaks has already expressed interest in this too. So we've got a great line, and I'd be happy to talk to you, JC, about especially the Calistoga one, because we found the map, we found stuff that we're about ready to push send.
Carol, if this is a beta situation, we would be an ideal candidate because we are just starting out. Coombsville, Wild Horse Valley, FSC.
Yeah,
So I'd
probably
like to be on that list.
Yeah, it'd be great to do a community evaluation. And I think the new community evaluations will be focusing on structure ignition resistance.
Okay,
So you'll get better data to work with.
okay.
I had a question for the insurance guys. Is there any way to find out what the CoreLogic or Fireline ratings are of your individual properties?
I'll start just by saying most insurers won't share that with you, but the regulations, one of the components of the proposed regulations is that insurers would have to share that with you and tell you what you can do to improve your score. I will say though, if you're looking at that model, that high level model, there's nothing within your control to do generally, unless you got your whole community to chop down the whole forest within a mile of your house. But some insurers will share, some won't. They'll all be mandated to share if the regulations go forward.
Yeah, that's accurate. Most of the insurance carriers pay for the third-party service. So it's something that they just kind of use to themselves, or they even have their own in-house fire rating score or fire score process. So it really depends, like Joel said, on who the carrier is and whether or not they're willing to share it.
There's a strong correlation though, if we can get access to this information, especially with the group that's on this call today. So we're looking at, we build and execute large land level fuel reduction projects to protect communities or put in larger fuel breaks that would be beneficial in changing some of these models. You know, like you mentioned, where you said you have to get the community together. We have that cooperation now. We have access to that funding and resources to complete this work. But I did run into the same problem that you guys just mentioned. I work with the insurance companies on the underwriting of homes in Napa County through our fire marshal's office. We had some fail that, in my expert opinion, was not accurate.
Yeah.
And so I tried to get their scores so that we could build on those plans and improve it from the insurance company's model. And the fire line scores weren't accurate. It was proprietary. Their insurance premiums are based off of that. So if they shared that information, they're showing their cards on a competitive market on rates. So, you know, and that made sense once they did explain it. But I think once they're transparent, we're trying to protect these communities and not just sell them an insurance policy. And if we can make a difference with fuel reduction, or maintenance of fuel reduction, like these large fires that have came through, those are prescribed burns that reduce fuels. And if we can maintain those, there's value in that as well. So,
Yeah,
That's
hopefully
well
CAL
said.
FIRE will support the CDI regulations that would create that kind of transparency. So we'll have a hearing, and so you submit something in writing to support them. That would be helpful.
Pam, I see you've got your hand up. You want to unmute?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm good. I was just wanting to volunteer and I had put it in the notes.
Okay,
So, yeah, thanks.
right on. Okay. Okay, next, I can't remember what our next topic is. Does anyone have anything that's kind of burning that they really want to talk about next time we gather?
That was a bad choice of words.
Yeah, no pun
Sorry,
intended.
that was a bad choice of words.
I do.
Yeah.
So we're discussing in our Fire Safe Council that although we're very grateful for some grants that we've received, some DOD money, which is a one-time only, and some CAL FIRE money that's come around, there was a PG&E grant that did not materialize. And of the grants that we proposed back in whenever February, when we all did a big rush to do that, you know, there's still many that are unfunded. And so our big question is, what is our next funding round? How do we approach getting those additional grants that did not get any money? And so those fuel reduction projects have not happened. What's our next round? So that's my big topic question.
Okay.
I'm sure you don't have the answer today. But,
That's true. That's a good topic. Basically, it's Measure L didn't pass. What's
right.
next?
What's next?
What's next?
On the granular level, you know, what do we do with our 5 funding opportunities here that didn't get funded, that those people are still sitting there on ravines that are choked with fuel?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Carol, what do you think?
That's my question.
Okay. I think that's actually a very timely topic. So, okay. Well, you guys, it's 6:10. So I want to give a huge shout out to Joel and Gannon for joining us and sharing your time with us. Thank you. And Carol, you too, thank you a ton. I know it's moving mountains. And JC, it's great to see you. Thank you. And we will connect. We'll probably not meet that first Tuesday of the month, since that's like 2 weeks from now. So, but I will like to have us all meet in July. So, and coming up with what's next, we need to talk to the board, and I don't know. So we need to know. So, okay, awesome. Okay,
Bye,
bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Care.
Blaine,
And shout out to
bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.